The moment I opened that hotel room door, my entire world collapsed. My breath caught in my chest, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt fire. Daniel, the man I'd trusted with my future, lay entangled with Sarah, my maid of honor, my best friend since childhood. The very woman I had chosen to stand by my side on the most important day of my life. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, fury coursed through my veins, so powerful it nearly knocked me off my feet. They thought they'd broken me in that instant, but what they didn't know was that they had awakened something far more dangerous. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was the spark of a revenge that would unfold in front of hundreds of witnesses, on a day they would never forget. How could a friend betray me so deeply? How could the man I loved throw away a decade for one night of lust? And what revenge could possibly leave him shattered, humiliated, and in tears on the very day he thought would seal our happily ever after? This story is not just about heartbreak. It's about betrayal, vengeance, and the sweet taste of justice when it's served at the altar. I could have walked away that night, but instead, I chose to walk down the aisle. Not to marry him, but to destroy him in front of everyone he loved. The night before my wedding, I sat alone in my hotel suite with my vows. Every word I wrote carried my heart. Loyalty, trust, forever. The moonlight streamed through the gauzy curtains as I practiced my speech one final time, my voice trembling with emotion. Daniel, you are my anchor in every storm, my light in every darkness. At that very moment, 3 floors below, Daniel was slipping out of sight and into Sarah's arms. 2 worlds played out that night. Mine was filled with hope and nervous excitement. I had spent hours perfecting every detail. The flowers, the music, the seating arrangement. I even called my grandmother to thank her for the antique pearls she'd lent me, telling her how honored I was to wear them on my special day. Theirs was filled with betrayal. While I dreamed of our future children and the home we'd build together, they were already destroying it with every stolen kiss, every whispered lie. I remember my chest tightening around midnight. I told myself it was just pre-wedding nerves, that every bride feels this way before the big day. My mother had warned me about the butterflies, the sleepless nights, the overwhelming emotions. But deep down I knew something was wrong. The feeling clawed at my stomach like a living thing, refusing to be silenced. I just didn't know the truth was waiting only a few doors away. Unable to sleep, I decided to check on the wedding preparations one last time. The hotel staff had assured me everything was perfect, but I needed to see for myself. As I walked through the eerily quiet hallways, my silk robe rustling against my legs, I noticed a familiar laugh echoing from somewhere nearby. Sarah's laugh. Curiosity, or perhaps fate, led me down the hallway. Step by step, my bare feet silent on the plush carpet, closer to the room where everything I believed in was about to collapse. The laugh came again, followed by a deeper voice I knew better than my own heartbeat. Daniel's voice. My hand trembled as I reached for the door handle. Part of me wanted to turn around, to preserve the illusion just one more night. But the other part, the part that had always demanded truth over comfort, pushed me forward. And then, the moment I opened that hotel room door, my entire world collapsed again. My breath caught in my chest, and for the first time in my life I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt fire. Daniel, the man I trusted with my future, was in bed with Sarah, the woman I trusted with my life, my maid of honor, my best friend. The people I loved most had become the people who betrayed me the worst. They froze when they saw me. Daniel's face went white as death itself. Sarah pulled the sheet up to her chest, her eyes wide with terror. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody breathed. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, ready to snap. "Emma," Daniel whispered, scrambling to sit up. "This isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. And in that moment, something inside me changed forever. I could have collapsed. I could have screamed. I could have begged them to explain how they could do this to me. Instead, I smiled. A cold, calculating smile that made Sarah shrink back against the headboard. "Continue," I said quietly, my voice eerily calm. "Don't let me interrupt." And then I turned and walked away, closing the door behind me with a soft click that echoed like a gunshot in the silence. But I did not walk away from my wedding. What I planned next would shock everyone at the altar. The morning of my wedding, I looked in the mirror and saw a woman transformed. Not broken, not defeated, but determined. I applied my makeup with steady hands, each stroke of mascara, each sweep of blush preparing me for war. The woman staring back at me was a stranger, harder, colder, more dangerous than I'd ever been. The dress I had once chosen for love now became my armor. As I slipped into the ivory silk that had taken months to select, I remembered the joy I'd felt trying it on for the first time. Now it felt like a costume for the performance of a lifetime. My mother bustled around the bridal suite, adjusting flowers and fussing over last-minute details. "You look radiant, darling," she said, tears in her eyes. "Daniel is so lucky to have you." If only she knew how wrong she was. Sarah arrived an hour before the ceremony, her bridesmaid dress perfectly pressed, her makeup flawless. She moved like someone walking on glass, avoiding my eyes as she helped with final preparations. When she accidentally caught my gaze in the mirror, I saw guilt written across her features like a confession. "Are you ready for this?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I turned to face her, my smile bright and terrible. More ready than you could possibly imagine. The color drained from her face, and as I adjusted my grandmother's antique veil, the same veil 3 generations of brides had worn with pride, I whispered to myself, "Today they will pay." Guests filled the church, unaware of the storm that was coming. I watched from the bridal suite window as they arrived in their finest clothes, carrying gifts and wearing expectant smiles. My aunts and uncles, college friends, Daniel's business associates, 200 people gathered to witness what they thought would be the happiest day of my life. The church bells chimed, their sound echoing through the crisp morning air. Flowers adorned every pew, white roses and baby's breath, just as I'd dreamed. The photographer moved through the crowd, capturing candid moments of joy and anticipation. My family smiled and laughed, sharing stories of how Daniel and I had met, how he'd proposed on the beach where we'd had our first date. Daniel's mother showed off the diamond bracelet he'd bought her for the occasion, telling everyone what a thoughtful son she'd raised. The music began to play, and Sarah, my maid of honor, stood proudly by my side in the antechamber. She pretended to fix my gown, her hands brushing the same fabric she had already stained with her betrayal. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted my train, and I could hear her shallow, nervous breathing. Through the partly open door, I could see Daniel standing at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, the one we'd selected together during a romantic weekend in the city. His smile was wide, his eyes locked on the church doors where I would soon appear. He thought I would still say yes. He thought his secret was safe. His best man patted his shoulder reassuringly. The priest opened his ceremonial book. The organist's fingers hovered over the keys, waiting for my cue to begin the processional. But how could I? How could I promise forever to a man who had already destroyed me? How could I stand beside a friend who had twisted the knife so deeply into my back that I could still feel it turning? The wedding coordinator appeared at my side. "It's time," she whispered with an excited smile. I nodded, lifted my bouquet, white lilies symbolizing rebirth, and stepped toward my destiny. I didn't walk down that aisle as a bride. I walked down as an executioner. Each step echoed not with love, but with the weight of the secret I was about to unleash. The church doors opened and every head turned toward me. The organist struck the first notes of the wedding march, and I began my slow, measured walk toward the altar. My father took my arm, pride radiating from his face as we moved in perfect synchronization down the petal-strewn aisle. "You're beautiful, sweetheart," he whispered, squeezing my hand. "I'm so proud of you." I squeezed back, knowing these would be among the last peaceful moments we'd share for a long time. Daniel's face lit up when he saw me. Despite everything, he still looked at me with what seemed like genuine love and adoration. For a split second, I almost wavered, almost convinced myself that what I'd seen the night before was some terrible misunderstanding. Then Sarah caught my eye from her position at the altar, and I saw the truth written in her guilty expression. She knew. She remembered. And she was terrified. The priest smiled warmly as my father placed my hand in Daniel's. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice carrying across the packed church. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Daniel and Emma in holy matrimony." His words washed over me like background noise. All I could hear was the thundering of my own heartbeat, the whispered excitement of the guests, the rustling of Sarah's dress as she shifted nervously behind me. The ceremony proceeded exactly as rehearsed. Readings were recited, hymns were sung, blessings were offered. Daniel's eyes never left my face, and I saw in them the same man who had promised me the world, who had knelt in the sand with a ring and tears in his eyes. The same man who had betrayed me with my best friend mere hours ago. The priest asked if I was ready to share my vows, and I was. Just not the vows anyone expected. I pulled the folded paper from my hand, the one I had rewritten in the early hours of the morning while my heart burned with righteous fury. But instead of words of devotion and eternal love, I had crafted something else entirely, something that would change everything. My voice rang clear and strong through the hall. "Daniel, you promised me loyalty. Sarah, you promised me sisterhood. And yet last night I found the two of you together, in a hotel bed that should have never been yours to share." The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Gasps filled the room like a wave of shock rolling through the congregation. Murmurs spread like wildfire from pew to pew. Someone's program fluttered to the floor. A child asked loudly, "Mommy, what did the bride say?" Daniel's face drained of all color, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly like a fish gasping for air. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, her bouquet tumbling to the ground in a cascade of broken stems and scattered petals. And me? I stood taller than ever before, my voice growing stronger with each word. I asked the crowd, my voice carrying to every corner of the church. What would you do if the two people you trusted most betrayed you in the same breath? Would you forgive them, or would you show them that betrayal has consequences? The silence was deafening. 200 people sat frozen in their seats, unable to process what they were witnessing. This was supposed to be a celebration of love, not an execution of lies. I turned to Daniel, my voice steady and clear. "You thought today was the day you'd win me forever, but today is the day you lose me, and everything you ever thought you could hide." Then I faced Sarah, watching as tears began to stream down her carefully made-up face. "And you, the friend I loved like a sister, was one night of passion worth more than years of loyalty? Tell me, was it worth everything we built together?" The room went completely silent. Every guest, every relative, every friend stared in absolute shock. The priest clutched his book to his chest, his mouth agape. The photographer had stopped taking pictures, his camera hanging forgotten around his neck. And then I placed the microphone down on the altar, lifted my grandmother's antique veil from my head, and walked away. Not in shame, not in defeat, but in triumph. Because for the first time in my life, the pain wasn't mine to carry alone. It was theirs. Daniel broke down completely, collapsing to his knees at the altar as sobs racked his body. Sarah buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with the force of her crying. The wedding that was meant to unite us in holy matrimony had become the scene of their very public and very permanent downfall. And as I stepped out of the church into the brilliant afternoon sunlight, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: freedom. The weight that had been pressing down on my chest was gone, replaced by a lightness that made me feel like I could fly. Behind me, chaos erupted. Voices rose in confused conversations. Chairs scraped against the floor as people stood, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear Daniel calling my name between broken sobs. But I kept walking, my head held high, my wedding dress trailing behind me like a queen's train. Whispers followed me like shadows through the church parking lot. Some called me brave, others thought I was cruel, but not a single person could deny the truth of what they had witnessed. What they saw that day was not a wedding. It was justice served on a silver platter. For years I had lived in the illusion of perfect love, blinded by loyalty to those who never deserved it. But betrayal has a way of sharpening your vision until everything becomes crystal clear. Suddenly, every late-night text Daniel claimed was work-related, every time Sarah changed the subject when I mentioned my wedding plans, every nervous laugh they shared when they thought I wasn't looking, it was all there, waiting for me to piece it together like a puzzle I'd been too trusting to solve. And though the pain was heavy enough to crush mountains, the clarity was absolutely liberating. I had been deceived, manipulated, and betrayed by the two people I trusted most in the world. But I refused to let that deception define the rest of my story. Instead, I turned it into my strength. And in front of everyone who mattered to them, I made sure they would never forget the cost of betraying someone who loved them unconditionally. After the chaos of the ceremony, Daniel tried to reach me. His calls flooded my phone, his messages filled with excuses, apologies, and desperate pleas for forgiveness. But forgiveness is not a gift you give to those who crush your soul and smile while doing it. Sarah stayed silent. She didn't call. She didn't text. Perhaps she knew that no words could ever rebuild what she had destroyed. Friends I had known for years reached out, some stunned by what they saw, others admitting that they had suspected something but never had the courage to tell me. And it made me wonder, how many times do we ignore the warnings because we're too afraid to lose the people we love? How many times do we sacrifice our own peace just to keep the illusion alive? Life after that day was not easy. There were nights I lay awake replaying every memory, asking myself how I missed the signs. There were mornings when the emptiness felt heavier than I could carry. But with every passing day, I reminded myself of something important. Their betrayal was their choice, but how I responded was mine. I chose not to collapse under the weight of their lies. I chose to walk away, not as a victim, but as someone who demanded better. And in that choice, I found a strength I never knew I had. If you've ever been betrayed, you know the burning question that haunts you. Why me? But the truth is, betrayal says more about them than it ever will about you. Daniel's life spiraled after that day. His family turned their backs on him, embarrassed by the shame he brought to their name. The job opportunities he once boasted about suddenly dried up as his reputation followed him like a curse. Sarah was no better. Friends distanced themselves, unwilling to trust someone who could betray so deeply. Their lives intertwined by deceit became a prison, and I couldn't help but ask myself, was the betrayal worth the destruction that followed? If they had thought they could hide forever, my revenge proved otherwise. Do you think exposing them in public was too much? Or was it exactly the justice they deserved? I'll let you decide. But here's what I want you to take from my story. Betrayal is not the end of your life. It is the beginning of something new. When people reveal their true selves, believe them the first time. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't silence your intuition, and don't settle for less than the respect you deserve. I once thought love meant sacrifice, but now I understand that real love never requires you to sacrifice your dignity. Real friendship never forces you to doubt your worth. And if you find yourself surrounded by people who demand both, maybe it's time to walk away. So I ask you, if you were in my shoes, standing at that altar with a chance to expose the truth, would you have done it differently? Would you have walked away quietly? Or would you have given the world a front row seat to justice? Let me know in the comments, because your voice matters and your perspective might just help someone who is facing their own betrayal right now. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and check out our other videos for more stories of courage, resilience, and the strength it takes to rise again. Because at the end of the day, betrayal may break your heart, but revenge, when served with truth, has the power to set you free. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and check out our other videos for more stories of courage, resilience, and the strength it takes to rise again. Because at the end of the day, betrayal may break your heart, but revenge, when served with truth, has the power to set you free.